purpose of all this is to understand ourselves so we can make better decisions for us and for our relationships in every aspect of our life. So it's that, how can I understand me? How can I understand my spouse better? Welcome to the Get Your Marriage On podcast. I'm your host, Dan Purcell, a Christian marriage and intimacy expert and coach. I'm on a mission to help couples have the best sex and most emotionally intimate marriages possible. Our episodes cover topics you've always wondered about and are packed with practical advice designed to help you take your marriage to the next level. The famous psychologist Carl Jung once said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." Intimate marriages require a lot of intimate contact in terms of body, mind, head, and soul. It's also why I believe marriage, especially sex in marriage, is the most surefire path to grow up and mature to attain your best and highest version of yourself. The principles I want to share with you in today's episode is that when you have a better grasp of your own light and shadow and your spouse's light and shadow, you can work with each other's strengths and weaknesses too to create a remarkable marriage together. But this path requires a lot of self-awareness and practice, of course. One of the tools that I've found that has helped me understand myself and my wife better is the Enneagram personality typing. It's really popular, and there's a lot of free online tests that will help you identify your personality type. Today, I've invited Christa Hardin to my podcast to talk more about it. I've read her recent book, The Enneagram and Marriage, and wanted her to share some of her insights and experience with you to help you get your marriage on. Christa, welcome to the Get Your Marriage On podcast, or should I say welcome back. You've been a guest in the past, and I'm happy to have you here. How are you today?
Oh, I'm so glad to be back. I'm well, and it's so much fun to get to talk and hack through marriage stuff with you. Thank you, Dan.
Great. Yes, hack through marriage stuff. I love it. Now, we're talking about how we can better, work with ourselves and with our spouse. I want to hear a story of a time when you and your spouse kind of ran into some trouble because your different personalities clashed.
Oh, that's such a great way to start the episode. You're fun.
Uh-huh.
And starting with conflict, because we all know conflict is real. One time, my husband and I had a really fun family vacation, and we went to Maine. It was very picturesque. It was Bar Harbor. We ate ice cream ad nauseum. We just went to see Spider-Man, No Way Home. We had such a good time with I think our kids were preteens at the time, and then we were getting ready to pack up and leave after a great week. And my personality type, I love to keep moving. I love to have freedom. I love to take adventures. And I think our family was at a level that they felt very satiated and happy with the levels of adventures. But I was looking for more. My personality type has a hard time being satisfied. And so I wanted a new adventure. Not only that, I was wrestling with loss. I had lost my parents. And I was wrestling with I want something to help me to feel good. So I knew my personality type, I want to hike a big mountain. I want to feel like I had a huge, exhilarating experience. And I don't get to do this a lot. I live in flat Florida, unlike you.
Uh-huh.
So unfair.
Right.
Uh-huh. And so I don't get to live near Zion. But I'm over here then in Maine trying to take my family up this huge mountain. And I said, let's just do the backside. And not being detailed, we just listened to a guy who told us, go ahead and take this route. And my husband, Wes, is very planning oriented. We had already mapped everything out on all trails. He's like, these are the levels we are competent for. Suffice it to say, we found ourselves basically hanging off a cliff about 30 minutes later.
Now, the guy told you to go right because that was the easy route, but it was a mistake, right? It was actually the hard route.
Right. Yes, because I shared that in the book, and he was so funny because it was a guy, not the guide.
Okay.
So we shouldn't have probably trusted him.
Right.
And so we're literally having people complain. I'm literally smushed into the cleft of a mountain with my little babies. I mean, they're not little, but they're two of them are fine. One of them in the middle is I don't like this. I have a heel cord issue. She was in physical therapy. She was good, but she wasn't in a great spot, she felt. Whereas I was you can do it. We're strong. We've got this. And it was just terrifying at the same time because when I physically saw how hard the terrain was, I knew I had backed us into something too daunting. In fact, there was a family in front of us where the little child was freaking out. And we actually had to call up to her, and I had to use some of my therapeutic techniques. Hey, it's going to be okay. Because I'm like, no one is going anywhere unless this little girl moves. So it was crazy. But we all did eventually get up. My husband had a lot to say, as you can imagine. And so did that middle child. But it was my moment, honestly, because I knew it too. It was the moment I knew my personality had gotten on top of me and that I needed to do something.
Gotcha. And what specifically about your personality got you in trouble in that moment?
Not being satisfied. We were already on such a great trip. And something about my type 7, is the classic FOMO, what's next, can be a great driver along with types 3 and 8. We tend to be movers and shakers and want to keep doing more and having more adventures. And so there was just, especially for 7 though, there's a sense of like, I need to continue on. I'm not set. This is not enough. So there's not that much of an off button for 7. And so what really can happen is the personality type can burn out or take an adventure too big. And in this case, when we're married, we bring other people in on those adventures sometimes, and they're not always happy about it.
Great. Let's pause and rewind just a moment. Some of our listeners may not know what you mean by saying, I'm a type 7. Can you talk about what you mean when you say I'm a type 7?
Yes. So 7s and there's types 1 through 9 in a system called the Enneagram. And you might know Myers-Briggs or MMPI, or maybe you enjoy the big 5. But either way, in the Enneagram system, there are 9 types. And the type 7, sometimes people call it the enthusiast, is somebody who, as you're hearing, and maybe you know this, they're not going to land. They hold a lot of plates. They like to stay in motion, kinetic learners. So being on a mountain and learning and doing is very comfortable for me. Skiing is very comfortable, tennis, running, all these kinds of things. Rest, not so comfortable. Having a very easy hike, not so comfortable. Unless I'm by myself and there's a sense of like my own rhythms of self-soothing. And that's something each personality type learns a little differently, right? How we all self-soothe differently is so important to marriage and family.
And each type has its own like primary motivation. It has its collection of fears and strengths, and also its liabilities or blind spots. So
exactly.
As a 7, like your main motivation would be what?
To stay out of pain and emotional, physical, keep moving, keep growing, keep learning. And it's good and bad. There's a good to it of you're going to be an explorer and an innovator. The bad, however, as we're noticing, is sometimes it's not shame on each of us with our bad area. It's just a sense of knowing this is where I'm not healthy. And that's when I can't rest, when I can't slow down, when I don't have that executive function to say, this is not good for everybody. And so that hasn't gotten to me that much in parenting. And when it did, it sort of really told me about my levels of health in the moment. I was like, Christa, you need to process your grief because you're moving too fast.
Great. Well, I hope to get a little deeper on that in just a moment. And you're married to your husband, Wes, and on the Enneagram, personality, typing, or whatever. What type would he be?
He is a type 1, and he is the classic improver and perfectionist. And so he's in the medical field, which is a great field for him because he is so detailed and nuanced for what's happening with people, including us. He's checking us out all the time. And hey, I'm checking this mole or that. And so he's really wonderful in the medical field. And we're grateful, but it also has its crazy part.
Great. So what's the primary motivation, superpower and kryptonite of a type 1?
Yeah, so he's really good with seeing the tiny details. He even had a cleaning business when he was in college called Attention to Detail, long before he knew he was an Enneagram 1.
Okay.
And he's just, he's always had this kind of flair for doing what's good and right. And that's the primary motivator. If you're a type 1 listening out there, is you want to be good. You want to be a good boy or girl. You've been raised that way usually. And there's nothing more important to you than being good and right and justice and fairness. And so that's something that he's very passionate about.
Great. And the strengths and weaknesses of that?
The strengths are that he can really help to make things better. He's such a good improver in the world. So whether it's your health or your home, every type 1 will have a different place of focus. That they're so good at that. And he's so good at that in our home for being detailed. And the hard part of that is, of course, sometimes they can be judgmental about their spouses, their kids, not just all about excellence, but about perfection. And I would say the biggest thing, if you're a 1 or the spouse of a 1, is that if you did 10 things right, they'll be able to find the 11th thing you didn't do right. And so if they're not healthy, that can be something they say out loud. Now, if they're healthy, they're still going to notice, but they're going to be able to do more like compliments and more balance.
Or manage that better. Great.
Yeah.
An example
exactly.
or a story of Wes and how his 1 shone through in the moment?
Yeah, so this was something that I didn't get to write in the book, but he totally gave me permission to. And that is that when we were in our earliest years of dating, some of the first things he tried to do was change my style. He's like, I don't like these clothes you're wearing. I want you to wear more feminine clothing. I want you to do your hair in a certain way and your lipstick in a certain way. And I remember my ex-boyfriend at the time came home from college one time and saw me wearing this lip gloss that Wes had wanted me to wear. And this boyfriend said, "That's not you. Why are you wearing that?" And I was just like, of course, I already explained I'm a 7. I was like, goodbye. Like, don't talk to me. I have moved on. But then it really kind of did haunt me over the years. And something Wes and I were able to talk through as we learned our Enneagram was, Wes, as much as you're an improver and I've appreciated all the good you've done for me, I also have my own styles and tastes. And so we've learned to appreciate his gifts, but finding his lens in moments when they're helpful and when they're not as helpful has been part of it too. Because let's say that he thought that I looked nice in pink, which he does. And I'm wearing black today. So, but if he loves pink on me, he's like, "Oh my gosh, you look so good in pink." If I choose to not wear pink, he's not mad, but he's extra happy if I wear pink. Whereas I think when he was at his unhealthy place, he would say, why aren't you it would make sense to me. I'm a logical type 1. If I told you I like you in pink, why wouldn't you just wear it? And he's also compliant type. And we could get into details, which we won't today, but he would do that. He's always said to me, if there's certain features about you that you like about me, and I know you get this, Dan, as a marriage helper, you do want to lean in. So anyway, that's something that we've really worked through over the years that I think has been really good for us, because I've been able to say, like, I just need you to love me for who I am already. And then he's been able to say, but also let's lean in together and really tell each other the truth about what we really love and what really attracts us.
That's really good. That's really good. So the whole point of why we're meeting today is, I think, to discuss this principle that the better and clearer you understand yourself, your own proclivities, your natural strengths, and also your natural liabilities, and your spouse's strengths and weaknesses too, the better you can work together, I think. And to, like you said this in your book, which I love, this quote says, the purpose of all this is to understand ourselves so we can make better decisions for us and for our relationships in every aspect of our life. So it's that, how can I understand me? How can I understand my spouse better?
Yeah.
As you
I
go
love
through this
that you were my
process, is there different maturity levels, I guess you could say, different levels of depth as you start to learn about yourself and about your spouse better?
Yeah, that's a great question, Dan. It's really excellent to know yourself, as we all know, but also to be able to say, where am I at on my type's levels of health? And so what we do in the Enneagram and with, I think, just therapy in general is you try to look to see, do you have wellness in your life in general? Do you have a healthy emotional, spiritual, physical lens that you're looking at life through? Or are you dysregulated? Is your window of tolerance low? Are you still processing from an insecure attachment style of some sort? And when we are in these low levels, our personality tendencies are going to show up in a more difficult way. So for the example I gave of the Beehive Mountain, you'll see I was at a lower level because I wasn't doing my emotional work. And that was important. And that's why I sort of spiraled down the level of health, whatever format or system you're working from. So it's so important for listeners to be able to dialogue with themselves to say, am I getting emotional, spiritual, physical self-care every day so that I can make sure I have the basics of health so that my window of tolerance for my, spouse and my family is at a healthy level.
Well, that's really good. And I think we tend to ignore how valuable like the basics are, right? Sleep, diet,
Mhm.
exercise.
Correct. Those are the
That's
big three for this.
right.
Yes.
Time for some stillness and, quiet reflection. We miss out on that so much. It's so important that we have. But if you have those, then you can take on the bigger challenges of your relationship. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. You can't address anything in marriage unless you have the basics cared for. It's like Abraham Maslow, for those who are familiar with his chart. It's the basic level of primary taking care of yourself.
Right. Great. And with self-actualization at the top, and that's where we want to get to. Is that right? Okay.
Yes. I could talk with you all day about that topic right there, about how the
Self-actualization. I see.
ideal marriage at the top of the mountain needs a lot of oxygen. Yeah, we could talk all about that. We can't always have that. Sometimes we need to come down the mountain and have the practical marriage. But anyway, yeah,
Great.
totally different pod.
Well, maybe we can get there one day. That'd be great.
Yeah, yeah.
So, Christa, there's 9 Enneagram types. So if there are 9 types, I calculated that's 45 possible combinations. So we're talking in marriage, like a 1 can be married to another 1, or a 2, or a 3, and so on. Are there any bad pairings or pairings that couples should avoid?
That's a great question. And there are no bad pairings, thankfully. So that way, anyone listening can be like, oh, wait, I thought maybe that was us because we're stressed. No, there's stressed pairings, but there's no bad pairings. And I can tell you, I've literally had the chance for the last 7 years or so, 20 years of doing marriage work, but 7 years of Enneagram to really dig into all of them. And I've been so blessed to have Instagram conversations and podcast conversations and research, and every pairing has its strengths and areas of shadow. So yeah, you're good. We just have to get you healthy, all of you guys, and us too.
Great. So to prepare for this podcast episode, my wife and I found a free Enneagram test. It takes about 20 minutes to do. And I can drop the link in the show notes if you're interested for the listeners here. But my wife is a 9 and I'm a 3. What can you tell us about our relationship based on what you know about that pairing?
Thank you for being vulnerable and being the guinea pig out there. I love when we do this on our own podcast. That's so awesome. Well, I would say, and this is so fun, that my first couple that I ever did Enneagram work with was a 9-3, was vulnerable.
Great.
So that's something about you guys that you're willing to go for it. And something about 9s and 3s are they're both very practical and comfort oriented. So one of the things that they're really good at is when they're healthy, they can both attune very well in the hard work space. And they can also very much rest well. And so there's a lot of peace, there's a lot of achievement, and there's a lot of planning. And so those go beautifully together. And they also really are both very, I would say, home-oriented and style-oriented, so that they're able to say, here's some trends. Whatever genre we're in, we're good at picking out quality brands and knowing what's really happening in the culture. They really have a sense for what's around them. And they're not above the culture. They're not all about relationships. They are about relationships, but they really get what's happening culturally. Does that sound like you guys so far?
Yeah, spot on, especially about really good at fashion and style.
Yes, that's awesome. Okay, so now going on to some depths. The 9 and the 3 are very sensitive types. Now, what's interesting is 9, 6, and 3 have a lot in common. I know you're not 6s per se, but those 3 types have a lot in common and may move into even some of the others' behaviors sometimes. But what's really interesting is that they can both be inhibited with thinking, feeling, and doing. So even though you might say, well, 3 is a feelings type, very heart-oriented, and Dan, you're probably excellent at reading the feelings of others, which makes you great at what you do. Sometimes 3s are so busy achieving that they don't attune to their own feelings. At the same time, 9s are body types and very gut-oriented and have a sense for what they feel is right and wrong, sort of like my husband Wes, because they're also body types. But they're also, because they're sort of get tired in their bodies very easily and they hold their anger, and sometimes they don't express that justice in the world. They just feel it. They can be sort of asleep to their anger. And so while you're asleep to your heart, she can be asleep to her anger. There can be a sense of like, we're not talking out what really needs to be said. And we might not even know. We might even be asleep to the need at all. So sometimes when I work with this pairing, it's about helping the 3 to understand they're very sensitive and romantic and to be honest about what they really have going on underneath. And for the 9 to be able to stay with them instead of running away and hiding and feeling like conflict is going to be bad and their partner is going to leave them, that the 9 instead says, okay, I'm a peacemaker, I can stay, and I can talk this out, and getting through the conflict will actually make us healthier. So that dynamic really, like I said, kind of can move away from each other into these places of safety, but they're not very actually safe places because they distance them.
Ah, makes sense. So that's right. Some of our proclivities is we both like to avoid conflict, sometimes at all costs,
Mm,
and it gets us in trouble
yeah.
when we're unhealthy.
Yeah.
But when we have it, when
Yeah.
we're more
Right.
anchored and working, we can
Yeah.
recognize the conflict for what it is. Even though we
Yes.
don't, rush to it like maybe an 8 would,
Yep.
we
Exactly.
can sit with
You can
it. Yeah, we can
practically.
practice and move through it.
Yes, and yeah, because this is the thing about your types is you're very practical, as I mentioned, pragmatic types. And so what I love about your types is there's not a whole lot of drama. It's like, we want to figure this out. Nobody's trying to play games. We want to love each other. Now, we may be shy at times about doing the conflict resolution, but we want that. Whereas if you're like a 174, or you mentioned, 2-5, maybe 8, there may be some passion, some game playing going on, or there may be some ideals. Because Wes and I are both in the idealist triad versus the practical triad that you're in. And we're just shooting for the moon all the time. We want to be at the top of that mountain all the time,
Uh-huh.
physically and emotionally. So
Uh-huh.
I love when 3s and 9s come together because you guys are like, we're good.
Good, good. All right, Chris, I have an example of us, and I think I've shared this on the podcast before, so maybe it's okay to kind of share it in this context. Maybe you can help us understand ourselves in light of a piece of conflict that we've had in the past. When the COVID vaccine came out, my wife and I had very different approaches on how to handle it, whether we get vaccinated or not. There's a lot of information, and looking back, a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of fear, a lot of speculation, and everything. And anyway, we didn't handle that very well in our marriage at that time. Can you help us kind of see why the 9 and the 3 in this example kind of tend to have conflict over things like that, or deal with the conflict and things like that?
That's such a good example. And I just want to liken that first to everybody listening. I think everyone went through something like this in their family, between their adult kids, extended family, neighbors, friends. It was also in marriages, as you bravely shared. And I think that that's first and foremost, everyone was in a self preserving stance a little bit like, how do I keep us alive? And so we have 2 strong personality types here. People don't often know the 9 is a very strong type. The 3 people know. They're like, 3s can be assertive, independent, they're achievers, and they're going to push through and figure things out. Whereas the 9 is also very strong, even though they're peacemakers. A lot of our world peacemakers and even presidents have been, we think, 9s because of the diplomacy and the ability to see every position. When they're healthy, they can also pick out their own position. And sometimes when they're not, they can sort of sleep to some of the information, just like 3s could, if they're not healthy, push through some of the information. So you have 2 types who have very strong opinions when it comes to what's right and justice and also innovating. And I think that that's hard for everybody to find the same route when, like I said, one person is sort of made even for going against the grain and the other person is maybe made more for peace. But with that one, I don't even want to guess on which one was which because honestly, 9s can be all about like passivity, like let's not do something too. So wherever either of you stood, there's just a sense of we both feel we're right and we're both very strong types.
It's good. Good.
And yeah, those are very strong types. My husband being a 1, we have a 9 daughter who's a teen, and it is so fun to be a fly in the wall.
Uh-huh.
But because it's helped me to understand when 2 strong types are together, it's not always bad when they have strong opinions. It's just interesting,
Uh-huh.
you know?
Yeah.
So you guys can both have a lot of power there.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Very strong pairing. Now I see why you guys are so powerful in the world in a good way.
Well, thank you. That's very kind of you to say.
Mhm.
Krista, anything else we should know about our pairing?
I would say that what's so important for everybody to know is that every couple will start out with a shine at the beginning of your relationship where you're just like, we are so good together and we really move in tandem. And I love, I'm sure you and Emily at the beginning of the relationship, it's like there's stars in our eyes. And so the pairing lights up and you're like, oh my gosh, I love that she's a good listener and she's a 9. And then she's fully awake. And I love that he's a 3 and he's achieving for us. And when we hit these shadows, and Wes and I, same thing, I love that he's making me better and he loves that I'm giving him fun. In the shadows, after the honeymoon period's over, every pairing has their dark night of the soul, where we really kind of come around to the hard parts of each other. But what we're saying here, and I know you do this a lot on your pod, and I'm so thankful for your work, is when you can come back together, talk through the conflict, build intimacy together, you really can come out deeper, richer, and even use your gifts again together in the world in a more beautiful way. And really shine out in your particular light together. So I just want to encourage you that if you're willing to walk through the shadows and immerse in the work, there's a light on the other side.
Great. Very good. Can you tell me of a story of a couple you've worked with using these tools of the Enneagram, helping each person to understand themselves better and their spouses better, that helped the couple improve their sexual relationship through it all?
Yes, I have worked with, I'm going to use the example of a 2 and a 5
Okay.
pairing. A type 2, just a helper, a giver, often has a very strong desire for connection on an emotional level. And somebody who's more of a 5 is more of a classically masculine personality who's ready to work hard and also to maybe have a sexual bond, but just kind of one and done. And as you can imagine, these two in marriage, we have this emotional person paired with somebody who's like, I'm just about the logic and the practicality of it. That can be really hard and really devastating, especially for that type 2 helper. And this is also a very common pairing, which is why I use it and see a lot of couples with this. And so what can happen is the 5, often the male, and it was here in this case, but wants to have a sexual bond and doesn't understand why their wife or their spouse is saying, like, I'm just not interested. And it's because they're forgetting that for many people, especially heart types 2s, 3s, and 4s, the heart connection is so important and powerful because they're looking to know that they have worth in your eyes, not just that you want to have an experience, practically speaking, so that you can have an orgasm. They want to know that there's meaning and love behind what you do. Now, for a 5 or this introvert that we're talking about here on the other side, he didn't feel like that wasn't there. He's like, that's a given. I love you. And when I work, that's exactly what I'm doing, is connecting with you because I'm making you money and you're a positivity type and you feel so happy when I make you money. But she was saying, I want more. I want you. I want connection and I want time with you, not just you working for me. So once he really heard that, we kind of came to some of his core fears as a 5, which were, I feel like I'm inadequate unless I'm always researching, always learning, and even hoarding my emotions. Because emotions had felt overwhelming to him and to most 5s. And so once she learned that her best gift could be triggering for him, she began to ask, what am I doing that's triggering for you emotionally? And he would say, well, sometimes I feel like I'm giving to you sexually or otherwise, but it's not really enough. And so what they learned is to nuance what for her, she really liked words of affirmation. And that was enough for her. And she said, I'm okay with you even working less and bringing in less money if it means we have more love. And so that sort of lifted off his sense of my worth is equated with me having material gain. And she was able to say, like, I'm also willing to even, help you more in the physicality of how stressful managing all your tasks are, because he was trying to just serve her. So once they figured out these things, it led directly into a healthier sex life because they felt safer together. There was this new layer of we're just husband and wife, but I know you fear inadequacy for the husband. I know you as the wife fear that you don't have worth. And so they could start speaking the love languages directly into one another. So it was really beautiful and it's such a fun pairing.
That's great. Good. I'm glad you could help them too. And what I like about that story is you kind of help them see their own immaturity in it.
Yeah.
That's kind of inherent, but how do I kind of push through that to grow through it? So I think some people dislike personality tests because it feels like it pigeonholes them and it
Yeah.
confines them. And it's that static versus growth fixed versus growth mindset. Like, oh, I'm this personality type. That's the
Yeah,
way I am.
absolutely.
I'm fixed this way.
Yeah.
So like fixed
Yeah.
meaning unmovable,
Yeah,
right?
that's not good.
And
Yeah.
we got to remember that we're dynamic people. The way we
Yes.
express our personality is going to grow and change over the years, hopefully, as we mature and grow,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
we learn how to
Yes.
master
100%.
ourselves. Like that man that was a 5, he had to learn some of the things. Like, I'm a little bit too work focused. I'm a little too outcome oriented in this
Yeah.
moment. And I can just imagine him when he's like, how come she doesn't want sex with me? His first instinct is to actually like do more research.
Right.
Right?
Exactly. Yes.
Read more books, listen to more podcasts, right?
Exactly.
I got to work harder. I got to crack
Exactly.
the code. What is it? Is it my technique?
Yes.
Is it 3 times to the right? Or is it 2 times to the left? Like, no, that's not it.
Right. Isn't that exactly it? I love how as a 3, you can just be so logical and clarifying for us. Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yep, exactly. I've been there. It's not that. It's because it's more than that. It's bigger than that.
Yeah.
But we have our blind spots. We don't know what we don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
And
And she didn't know all the work he was putting in to love her. So that always speaks to my 2s because they always sort of want more love and mushy gushy and hugs. And when they hear that, they're like, oh, you have other ways of loving me. So like you said, it makes them more expansive versus this fixed kind of type.
Yes, exactly. Good. Right. And I think this points to the value of coaching. I think one of the biggest benefits to coaching is it helps us see ourselves better. We understand ourselves better. And then our own blind spots that we're, by definition, we're blind to, we can't see, is kind of illuminated. And now that we're aware of it, and we increase our awareness, we increase our intelligence, we can then operate better if we choose to take the courageous path that leads to that.
So good. Yeah.
So you've written this fantastic book. It's available now. I've read it, and I think it's excellent for couples that love like Enneagram and want to apply it to their marriage and to their intimate relationship. Is there any other things you want to tell us about your book or how it can benefit a couple?
Well, I just really appreciate you sharing and reading it. That is so awesome. I really tried to share from 20 years of general marriage research and personality research so that couples would, like you said, not feel pegged or typed, but able to be seen. Because I think a lot of general marriage books take us on a journey generally. And so this one tries to do the best of both. Like, here's the best general tips for you. So if you're not super into personality type, but maybe a little, make sure you just look at, I have forgiveness practices, soul care practices, recommendations for how often you can spend time together to have the best marriage practices, as well as conflict reminders and how to get through that. But if you do want to dig in with me on personality, tons of that there. I have all the 45 pairings, a mini treatment plan for each one. So you might be able to see yourself in different stages of the marriage and see your different gifts and how they pair up together. And I call that your glow, just the way you shine God's light into the world. So I would love for you to be able to just experience this journey with me and also know I'm not above anybody as you hear. I'm like everybody else in different seasons and moments. Hopefully we're generally getting healthier and healthier, but we all have moments where we slip up. So never coming at anyone with shame, but tons of grace for this beautiful journey you're on.
Very good. Great. Well, thank you very much. How can people find your book and what's it called?
Thank you. It's called The Enneagram and Marriage, Your Guide to Thriving Together in Your Unique Pairing, and it's on sale at Amazon, Baker Books, or wherever you buy books.
Very good. Thank you very much, Christa.
Thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you're interested in accelerating growth in your marriage, either sexually, emotionally, or spiritually, I want to invite you to work with me in my affordable coaching program called Next Level. More information about Next Level and my fun and sexy apps for couples are available at getyourmarriageon.com. Please also don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss a single episode. And be sure to tell your married friends. I promise, they will thank you for life. Now go get your marriage on.